3 minutes we have. We were here. Welcome home.
Thank you.
Obligatory. How was your break? How was your break? How was your break?
My break was great. How was your break?
Mine was good. Didn't do anything. Stuck around here. Yourself? Did you go any far?
I was at rowing.
Oh, for the last week. Yeah. You didn't really have a break.
No,
No. You rowed 8 days in a row with no break.
Yeah.
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 It was
But
fun.
that's because rowing is a break. When you're taught by an Olympian.
That's fair.
That's yeah.
That's fair. I
Yeah.
guess,
You're not supposed to have fun.
No.
You're supposed to win.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, as my coach said, it's not about winning or losing, it's about having fun. And nobody ever had fun losing.
That's a really good point.
Yeah,
That's a very
I
good
thought
point.
so. I thought so.
I also agree.
Now that you're here, something weird has happened.
Yes.
We have 4 rows of desks there, I just noticed.
Lit.
Yeah. Can you take those 3 desks and add them onto these 3 rows? And then those can be shifted this way so you can see better.
Okay. We're having a little traffic jam. I have no idea what's going on. No, because this one goes in the back. We're adding them. It wants me out. Yeah, but then this one goes here. What? Oh, that goes there. So you use there.
Okay, excellent. Welcome back. We're going to get started. Pull out your notes from last day. And a heads up, you will need lined paper at some point. A separate sheet. If you didn't bring any, I might have some somewhere. And hopefully friends of yours might have some. Because there may be notes without a sheet. Gentlemen, come here. Why are you late? Oh, what? Other than that.
Of course I do.
You have so much time before this class. My argument has been we don't need tutorial time because students are even later during that time. So this time I'm not going to punish you, but you are going to swear an oath. Can I have a vote?
Do you say you're
I. Do solemnly swear.
Maybe I'll look. Is this it?
To never be late again. And if I do, may the fleas of 1,000 camels infest my eyes. Excellent, thank you. Okay. Oh, thank you. Oh, it's on. But thank you for remembering. Last day we were here. If you weren't here, you need to catch up in terms of notes. We started artificial selection after natural selection, in which we breed things. Someone pointed out the other class, they were confused because Darwin liked breeding pigeons. I would like to clarify, Darwin likes breeding pigeons to other pigeons. They all descend from the wild rock dove, And the reason you see them in cities nowadays is it fell out of favor and everybody just released their pigeons. And a lot of breeds actually completely disappeared. And now we just have what are the equivalent of flying rats. I think, actually no, we did that too. And we did that. We did that. No, we didn't. Where were we? Artificial, no, we were there. And this is the new stuff. So, artificial selection. What? Hand, if you have a question.
Me and him don't have 1.7.
It's in the old notes. Like, you have it. We've been doing it for weeks. Before the weeks that you're away. Probably. Yeah, it's just at the very end. And we just have to finish this up. This is the section as well that we looked at the animal breeding, in which we saw the dogs have been bred to have no nose, breathing problems, lack of an orbital eye, and that modern breeding has actually bred them into non-survival ways. So just to define it, artificial selection is humans selecting desirable traits in plants and animals. We've been doing this for thousands of years. Corn is often used as an example. It was first discovered in South America, I believe. And even if there wasn't an active farming practice, people certainly knew these plants were tasty and made sure they grew back. Because any group of humans that didn't do that didn't have the plants grow back and didn't do that well. So humans with good cultural practices tended to survive. It's a bit like if you, when we look at different human societies, if you're worried like, I want to take on a vegetarian diet, I'm worried if I'll get enough protein. Pick any traditional cultural vegetarian diet. You will get enough protein. Because if they didn't get enough protein, that group wouldn't have survived. They all have enough protein. If you just decide to go vegetarian and eat nothing but like meat, you're going, not meat, sorry. The other diet, the new one I think I saw, carnivore diet, where you eat nothing but meat, you are going to die. You cannot exist on meat alone. You need a heck of a lot of fat. You need to eat some organs and a few raw eyeballs. There is a traditional carnivore-like diet. They're not carnivores the entire year, but the Inuit, in the wintertime, vegetables don't grow in the far north in the wintertime. And the plants you can get at underneath the snow, not good. But it turns out that if you eat raw seal eyes, they're surprisingly high in things like vitamin C. Now, it's helpful if you actually are Inuit, because it turns out their enzymes have actually been modified a bit over time through evolution. They're really good at extracting it from that source, but you could probably survive too. You just might have to eat more. And they consider raw seal eyeballs a delicacy. It's delicious. And then someone asked, why would they even start doing that? And the answer is, any group that didn't have that practice is not around anymore because they didn't get enough vitamin C and they all kept getting scurvy. So any group that figured that out, even by accident, helped. So any traditional trait will work, and if you start breeding things, you're looking at the plants and animals you like, and you start cultivating which ones are going to breed, you can very quickly create the plants and animals that you like. Every single plant you see in the grocery store has been the result of a long, long process of artificial selection. There is no such thing as a natural plant that you will eat unless you literally go out into the forest and start eating pine cones and pine needles. Things that mostly are not fit for human consumption because we haven't been breeding them very well. You can make pine needle tea. It's very good. I actually don't know if it's safe, so forget I said that. I had it once because I was camping, lost all our food, and I was very hungry. That might be why I think it was good. Doesn't have any nutrients like calories, though. Humans selected desirable traits in plants and animals by selecting which organisms breed together is now called artificial selection. So we do it for our pets, and we saw that example last day. The dogs, German Shepherds, for example, with the very low sloping back. We do that with our food animals. Our dairy cows don't survive well in the wilderness if you just let them go, because they're designed to produce milk for 10 months out of the year or 8 months out of the year, depending. And so they're not really designed for running away from a wolf, and have lost a lot of their instincts. Chickens grow so fast that if you let them keep growing beyond the slaughter point, they would lose the ability to walk. There was a group that freed a bunch of chickens from a farm in the States, and they were quite proud of it, and the farmer explained that all of those chickens were going to slowly starve to death when they grew to their size, because they wouldn't be able to move from the spot they were. They have been bred to eat. They are not bred for survival. So there is a problem if you start taking things that we've designed for a particular environment out of that environment and now putting it in another environment. Now, any of them that has a mutation that they can walk, they're going to do better, and you might find some wild chickens in a few years. It doesn't necessarily take that long, as long as they survive. There is differences in survival. So I used dairy cows as an example because I grew up on a dairy farm, and so there is a process by which the farmer will sit down and look at all the cows and they keep track of milk production for every cow for the entire year, and then they look that up and they go, that was a good milk producer, that one wasn't, so it's good enough to keep, but we're not going to take any cows from that one, and this one was fantastic. We're going to put it against the best bull. And best bull is not one you have in your farm. You get a catalog, and the catalog has all the bulls in it, and it has their offspring and how much milk those offspring gave. So you can go, oh, that's a good bull. That bull will cost me about $150 to get its gametes. They deliver it to you in liquid nitrogen, and then you give that to the cow, and then the cow has a calf. And so farming nowadays is very precise with genetics. It is now picking the best and getting the traits they want. You may look at the cow, it's a great milk producer, but it is now, we've bred it for milk so much, it's not walking properly and it goes lame easily. Let's breed it to a bull that has a better conformation with its hind legs and has a better structure. And they start adjusting for all of these things. So there's a lot of science behind this. Many farmers have degrees. And the newest trend, which I'm not sure is good, is that corporations buy up farms and then put other people in charge to make sure they can extract all they can and to take control of all of that. Artificial selection is similar to natural selection in that it is differences in survival and reproduction. And it's the same thing as before. What's the term for genes in an organism? Alleles. So we just have alleles in a population changing. That's all evolution is. The number of genes and a type. Question, Guy? No. Yeah. Artificial selection also causes the alleles selected to become more common. If they're selected, depends on the way that you think of it. And of course, this isn't terribly hard to imagine. We can imagine that everybody got really excited over chicken beaks. It became a health craze. You take chicken beaks, you powder it up, you put it in a pill, and you eat it. And then that cures cancer. I mean, it doesn't, but somebody on TV said so. So now everybody wants chicken beaks. So farmers start looking at the chickens, they pick the ones with the longest beaks and make sure that we raise those eggs. Those eggs give chickens that have slightly longer beaks, and we start pairing those up with roosters. Prize roosters with extra long beaks. And then over time, we get these chickens who can barely hold their head up, but they have massively sized beaks. They can't eat food and have to be fed a special diet from a special machine because they can't eat off the ground. But we are getting a lot of this. And then someone else comes along and says, oh, wait a minute, it's rhino horn instead. And then everybody stops buying it and all those chickens die. But it's amazing what you can do in a relatively short amount of time with evolution if you start selecting for traits. Because once humans take over, evolution selects for a lot of things at the same time, and it's you've got to be able to stay alive, you've got to be able to have children. Humans wanting to stay alive and have children, but we'll adjust your environment to fit the one trait we want, so that you can get some really extreme cases with human and artificial. So, humans are in charge. Someone asked me if there's any other animal like humans that breeds. Ants will capture aphids and milk them for their honey. Aphids don't give off honey, but they give off a sweet nectar that might be considered similar. And there might be some evidence that that they might keep some of them. I think the evidence that they actually select the breeding is fairly weak, but there is definitely a symbiotic relationship. Aphids have absolutely evolved to be more attractive to the ants because it's a pretty sweet gig. You get captured by ants, and then you get fed for the rest of your life, and they like all your children, and they get fed for a long time, and provided the ants don't die, you do pretty well, and your children tend to survive more often. So there's definitely aphids that have evolved with ants. Whether or not the ants actually did any selection in that process, and it was just a matter of coevolution, I'm not entirely sure. And I'm going to put natural in quotes because it doesn't mean anything, but you know what I mean, because I think I went on a rant last day about that with beaver dams. Why do I put natural in quotes? What is unnatural? Yeah?
Like artificially done by us.
Yeah, artificially done by humans. What is natural? Made by the earth. Nature. Are we part of nature? Yeah. So if we make something, is it natural? Why not? If we're part of nature.
We're just better.
Yeah, we're just better. A beaver makes a beaver dam, and a human makes a hydroelectric dam. There's only one difference between those two. The beaver dam sucks. It's small, it floods a small piece of land. Half the time the beavers get lumber on them because they're not good at logging either. It turns out logging is really dangerous whether you're a beaver or a human. It's one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. And ours is huge. We even did an environmental impact study. Did the beaver do an environmental impact study before it took all those forest creatures out of their home with the flooding? No, it did not. Our dams are much better, but they're natural because what part of it isn't natural? Which materials?
We used to make the,
But give me an example of a material, any material that would be artificial. Anybody, any part of a hydroelectric dam that would be artificial.
Concrete.
Concrete, what's concrete made out of?
Rocks.
Rocks, which are natural, and some calcium stuff that binds it together, which is natural. Any other parts of a dam that would be? Yeah. Pardon?
Metal.
Metal. Where does metal come from?
The earth.
The earth. It's a rock. You can even find some of them lying around the ground like gold. I mean, we smelt it and we process it, but it's from a rock. Anything else that's part of a dam that isn't natural?
is there like electricity in it?
Yeah, electricity. Electricity is entirely unnatural. No. I mean, there's lightning storms, it's just electrons moving back and forth. The only difference between natural and unnatural is we often use this. And the reason they don't want to use this term is just human created. And we use it as a shorthand, the word natural, for so human created equals non-natural. And did I do this rant last day? No one remembers, it's been too long. Non-human created equals natural. Number one, there is no natural food that's in your grocery store, even in the organic section. All of that is the selective process of hundreds, if not thousands, years of breeding. they're all entirely human created. You're just adjusting what types of human creations have gone into it. And at the fundamental level, everything is natural. Non-natural would be something like ghosts, something that exists outside of the universe. The word doesn't really have any meaning beyond that. The problem is that in philosophy, we often use natural as synonymous with good. A bear with syphilis is natural, but if I let one loose in the classroom, it probably wouldn't be considered good. Medicine is human-made, would probably be considered unnatural, but if it saved your life or the life of your children or parents, you probably consider that good. It depends, of course, a large amount on what you define as good. Very recently, some parents who were objecting to vaccines in, I think, Texas, did not vaccinate their children, and their children died of measles. And they went on the news and said that was still good because getting the vaccine would have been worse. And the reporters did not ask the follow-up question, which is how? How would that have been worse? How would that have been worse? Even if you believe vaccines cause autism, which is not true, having a child with autism is so much, there's nothing wrong with having a child with autism, and they're still alive. Weird. But that is the artificial creation. I'm going to do that distinction more after, because we're going to go through a brief thing about bias and ethics after we're done this section, because we're going to watch a couple of films and analyze them. Animal breeding. All domestic animals. Hold it. What just happened? The lights just came on. All domesticated animals, dogs, cats, sheep, horses, cows, are the products of hundreds of years at least. In the case of dogs, it definitely could be thousands. We, in fact, have found some evidence that there is some co-evolution between dogs and humans now. We may have adapted in some ways to them. Dogs, for example, don't smile. Wolves don't smile. Dogs definitely try to smile because we bred them to try and mimic human traits. And domesticated. By the way, if you see a wolf smile at you, get out of there. Wolves don't smile. Monkeys don't smile. Chimpanzees don't smile. Squirrels don't smile. They're burying their teeth in the mammal world. That is a universal sign of, I'm about to bite you, back away. Only it seems, even in chimpanzees and apes, they don't really smile. We smile, and it's really weird we do that because nothing else does. And we're like, hey, see my sharp teeth? I like you. It's weird. But we have evolved a variety of expressions to communicate emotion, and that apparently is one of them. Dogs were the first, as far as we know. Those of you that think cats are better, they're not. It's just that dogs are so much smarter, and they actually like you. You know deep in your heart that if you die, the cat will eat you because it's hungry and you didn't feed it. But the dog will guard most of the time. We have found dogs starving to death, this is a little sad, sorry, in an apartment where their owner has died, still guarding the body. We have never found a cat doing that. Once you die, you're food. Now the cats, do we think dogs see you as one of their pack? Cats seem to see you as a really stupid cat. They're really excited when you come home with stuff because you finally managed to hunt and actually get something, but you're useless most of the time. Whereas dogs actually think you're part of the pack, and hopefully if you've trained it properly, it also thinks that you're in charge. Sometimes they think they're in charge. If you've ever had a dog and it's really frightened of things, when you're going for a walk, and it always likes to leap forward, make sure when you're walking that you, when something comes up that would normally cause your dog to be aggressive, you put yourself between whatever it is and your dog. That teaches them that you are protecting them from danger. They don't have to protect you. It puts you in charge. That means you're the leader of the pack. They can relax. And slowly over time, if you're consistent with similar practices, they will learn it. Because dogs have a built-in hierarchy. Cats don't have a hierarchy. They live in a warren. They're all equal. So they don't have a leader. However, I should not malign cats too much. They are probably the single greatest species for protecting our food source because they have been used for thousands of years to eat mice and rats and keep them away from our grains. And there's a good argument to say that wheat domesticated us and not the other way around. Okay, we did dog species. I showed you some pictures last day. We have the common ancestor of the gray wolf. To all the different weird things we see today, they're all dogs. These aren't separate species. They're just what humans have selected. They all can interbreed with each other. And in fact, if some of them did, they might be a little bit healthier. So, what have we bred for meat? Cows. Pigs. Chicken. Chicken's very popular all the way around the world. Sorry? I heard lamb. Sheep. You just admitted that you like baby lamb. Little babies. Pardon? Veal. Why do we have different names in English? We have cow. Duck. I don't know of any food mice. Are there mice bred for food? There is definitely pigeon bred for food.
Really?
Yep. People don't do it much anymore, but you can definitely get pigeon food. But then they're bigger and they yeah. Anything else? Horses. I'm not. That one I have heard. I haven't heard of a breed of horse bred for food, but I have heard of countries that take old horses and turn them into food. So, is there bred kangaroo for food, or do they just hunt wild kangaroo? Like deer aren't bred for food. They're bred. I'll go with it. Okay, what are we arguing about? That's not bred for food. People hunt it and eat it. There's a difference. So, for example, the example I gave here was, if you went out right now into the forest of Vancouver Island and you hunted a deer and you ate it, you found food and you ate it, but you didn't breed the deer for food. It's not grown for food. It's not a product of artificial selection. I don't know of any crocodile farms in which they go, that crocodile is nice and fat and tasty, and they do that. Fish, yes. So we now do salmon farms. And pardon? Yeah. And there are salmon farms. You've never heard of salmon farms? Hugely controversial.
No one has ever eaten
Snails. There are definitely snail farms. And they bred them for taste, for restaurants. Yep. Are there frog farms? Are there?
There's also snake.
No, those are all caught, as far as I know. They don't breed them. So they're wild. Frogs I'm not sure about, but I will put... Those of you that proposed these, I want you to come back next day and show evidence. And show evidence. Whoever said pigeons I definitely know, duck I know, sheep I know. Horses I'm not sure they're ever bred for food. Kangaroo I'm not sure is bred for food. There are kangaroo farms, but I'm not sure there's a breeding farm. It's more like they capture them. And frogs I know there's snail farms in which they breed them. Last one? Are there crab farms? There's crab catching, but I'm not sure there's crab farms. And I have heard of people getting dogs, you let them run a bit wild, and then you go get it later and feed it, and they eat off of. But I don't know if there's like breeds that are bred to be eaten, or if you just get a certain breed and you eat it. Yeah, dogs.
I know oysters.
Oysters are farmed,
But they're breed.
but are they bred?
Dogs
Are certain breeds?
They're bred for their pearls, though, right?
Yeah, oysters might be. Okay.
Some are bred for
Now that you've been exposed to all the reasons why you should become a vegetarian, we have a lot of things that have been bred for milk. So we have cows. What else is there? Goat. Anything else? We do not have rat milk. Sorry. You can buy in some supermarkets horse milk. And there are, and especially traditionally, there are areas of the world in which the cow did not exist, but horses did. And pig. There were traditional pig milk farmers, although I don't know if that exists today. Now for physical labor,
For like to feed the little cats. Feed the kittens.
yeah, they make milk. How many have been domesticated to give humans milk? That's the different question. There's definitely, you can buy a goat. Yeah.
What?
Pig milk?
One of the things, if you were surprised, if you were saying something like, there are people that drink pig milk, I just want you to think that from an opposite perspective, the idea that you would look at a cow and go, I'm going to drink what comes out of that. It's the whole thing's weird. Or you watch a chicken lay an egg and you go, yep, that thing covered in poop, I'm going to break it open and eat it. Like, we eat stuff. There are milk goats, there are milk horses, and there were milk pigs. I don't know if there are any in existence today, but historically we had that. Physical labor, we have horses. What else have humans used for physical labor? Bulls, camels. I don't know if buffaloes were ever used for physical labor.
Oxen.
Oxen definitely.
Water buffalo.
Water buffalo definitely.
Donkeys.
Got that one?
I already said donkey.
I think that's enough.
Can't go for people.
If any of you know, one I haven't been able to confirm is if I think elephant labor has been a huge part of a human workforce as well. I think most of those cases, though, they actually capture the elephant as opposed to having a breeding program. It can take a long time to grow an elephant. Elephants are also a fantastic. Elephants are also a fantastic example of a psychological trait because they're quite smart. So when they're small, and the elephant's eventually going to be huge. It could run away from its owner, crash away. How do they make sure that they don't do that? They make sure that they're chained to something they cannot break when they're small, and then you make them try to escape. I leave it up to your imagination on how you'd make a small animal want to run away as fast as possible. And then after they learn repeatedly that they cannot break the chain, when they're adults, you can put a string around them and attach them to something, and they won't even try to break it. They never try to break it because they learned when they were young you cannot break it. Often used as a metaphor in psychology, what things do we learn that we're young that we don't bother trying to break when we're adults? Because that's a psychological trait that also appears in humans. Okay, my most hated plant, the common wild mustard. Evil. This is an example of a natural evil, like disease. Because this simple plant made everything I hate. Number one, whoops. From that, we can get broccoli. You breed for a certain part of the stem and flower, you get broccoli. You breed for a different part of the stem, you get cauliflower. You breed for the leaves, you get cabbage. You breed for the buds, you get Brussels sprouts. I've never had this, but I'm just going to assume it's awful. I saw it for sale once, I refused to buy it. Kale, do you know what the original use case of kale was? It was to line the display in restaurants where they put the meals because it was green and it was awful, and you just did that. And then somebody in like 2010, they hired the same marketer that made bacon really popular a decade earlier, and that person came up with kale salads as a health food, and then everybody started eating kale, and now everybody eats kale. It's a terrible, terrible plant, and everybody should stop, and we should burn it all to the ground. I will say it is apparently full of nutrients. I don't care. They all taste awful. There's apparently another one someone mentioned, but I'm not entirely sure what it is because I forgot to write it down. And again, who cares? If we're looking at the process of evolution, boom, 6,000 years ago, this is what a peach looked like. We can find evidence of these. These are the direct ancestors of our modern day peach. People ate them. We can find them in their camps. They were incredibly small. The pit was much, much larger than the flesh. You didn't get much off of them, and you had to gather a lot. And then we started determining which ones were going to breed with which ones. And so we would move pollen around, plant the trees where we liked them, plant the varieties where we liked them, and now we have the artificial peach. It is 90% edible flesh. It tastes reasonably good. It's amazingly larger, and we have over 200 different varieties. Back then, we have, 3 known varieties back then coming out from this region of the world. Now it's all over the world. It's not hard to do once you get really specific if you want to breed for something. Apples are famous for this. How many of you have had a Red Delicious? Really? That few? It's like the most common apple in the entire world. Hands up if you've had a Red Delicious at least once in your life.
How about a Honey Crisp?
No, I'm not talking about different types. It's just the Red Delicious.
Is it like the really dark red one?
Yeah.
Oh, like
Yeah. No. How many of you like the taste of the Red Delicious? Yeah, I don't like. It's awful. Why is it so common? It's extremely cheap to grow. The Red Delicious is called the Red Delicious. The closest taste to people who have tasted the ancestral one, which was like in the 40s. They say the Honey Crisp is closest, but it was better, they say. Who knows? It's their memory, they're old. But they said it was a fantastic flavor. It became extremely popular. So every orchard needed their own Red Delicious. However, it didn't travel well. So if you took it by wagon to faraway places, by the time it got there, the taste was off, it was starting to go rotten, it was a little mushy, like it wasn't good, didn't travel. So they started breeding for travel, and they started breeding to look bright red on the shelf when you bought it, which is what people wanted. Original Red Delicious was just kind of a bit redder than the other apples. It wasn't that really bright red. Once they bred for all those, they bred the flavor completely out of it. But they also made it extremely cheap to produce, which is why you find it as the cheapest apple you could find. It's actually sad that it's called the Red Delicious because it's no longer delicious. But the Honey Crisp was apparently closest, and you will notice if you started eating Honey Crisp when they first came out about 8 years ago, they are slowly getting less delicious as more people like them. They're trying to ship it further, and they're changing the breed in order to get it. Also, if you just take a Honey Crisp and you plant it, it's not going to taste necessarily like Honey Crisp. There's a lot of cloning involved, and sometimes they graft things, like you take an apple and you graft it on a different kind of apple tree, and it gives it a different flavor, and they can do lots of really fancy stuff. So just growing it from seed doesn't even guarantee that you'll get the same apple. So humans, good at breeding things. Oh. Almost all the plant foods we go are domesticated. I want to just go back for a second and point out, this is domesticated. Domesticated does not equal tame. You can be domesticated and tame. If you're domesticated and tame, you're probably safe. If you're domesticated and wild, you might actually even be more dangerous. Dogs that are wild and even because they're domesticated, they are more dangerous than wolves. The reason for that is that we bred out all their instincts to be afraid of humans, and they look at humans as potential sources of food. They can be much more vicious than wolves because they know that they kind of like our places to live, so they are attracted to human encampments, but they are not afraid of us, and so if they're wild and not tamed, they can be much more dangerous. The gray wolf, even if you tame it, is not domesticated. It is dangerous to have as a pet. If you take that wild dog and you tame it, it actually becomes fairly safe because its instincts aren't there. But the wolf instincts will never go away. So even if you tame it, it may one day still bite you because you did something slightly wrong and it decided it needed to challenge you for pack dominance. And its methods of challenging you for pack dominance will be different than the dog. That is why if you tame a tiger, as in the famous documentary a few years ago, you might get eaten. Okay. Almost plant foods we grow are domesticated from long periods of artificial selection. Our entire digestive system has actually co-evolved with wheat in order to digest grains better. Grains are an easy source of calories for humans. They're a heck of a lot easier than hunting down animals every day. And so once we figured out how to do that, it became very, very attractive. And we put up actually with a lot of disease and not moving around, and in some ways a lower quality of life just to be guaranteed food. The original wheat plant is just a little, this is corn, but the wheat one is similar. It has a few grains versus the grains we see today, and the original corn just looks like it's got a few little cobs. Here we have a giant one that actually can grow. Corn also produces a type of natural plastic. That's the coating on the outside. We actually bred a variety that produced almost exclusively that we could then shred and make to a natural type of plastic that you could use, but also be easy to decompose and easier on the environment. Sadly, those crops were burned. Since then, we've domesticated plants for their seeds. There is no such thing, by the way, as a vegetable. A vegetable is just what we call the foods that don't have a lot of calories that we don't really like, but we know are good for us. There's roots, and there's berries, and there's fruit. Tomato is a fruit. Intelligence is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it into the fruit salad. Vegetables are just, if you have a potato, you go, oh, that's a carb, that's not a vegetable. Well, a carrot and a potato are both part of the roots. They're part of a storage system for the plant in order to give it nutrients later on when life gets tough and to reproduce that way. They're the same thing. One's not a vegetable, one's not a carb. In terms of science, they all have different purposes. In terms of our table, we tend to classify them in terms of their nutrients for us. So things that have really high carbs, we tend to just call carbs. Those are our grains. Things we call fruits are the fruiting body around a bunch of seeds. In berries, you have the little seeds there. And then, of course, we have the leaves. If you make any of these sweet enough, we just call it a fruit, no matter if it's a berry or anything else. And we've bred all of them to be much, much bigger than their past. Oh, as well, beets are evil. Cauliflower and broccoli is evil. Beets are evil.
What's
Tuber. Tubers are the long roots, potatoes, carrots, beets. I planted beets in a garden when I was a young child. I didn't know what they were. When I was told by my mother that I planted beets, I immediately took a gardening instrument and dug up the entire garden because I forgot where I put them, and in no way did I want those beets to grow, because I knew if they grow, because I planted them, my mom would make me eat them, and I hate beets so much. Beets, if you eat them, they're one of the few vegetable foods that some vegetarian groups say you're not allowed to eat. Because they will change the color of your stool to look like you ate meat, because it's so red. That's how evil beets are. Beets are awful. Modern agriculture. How many people are on the planet? 8.2 billion. We need to feed all of those people. By 2050, we need to feed 99 billion people. That requires a lot of forethought and a lot of intelligence. It requires some careful planning. And it would also be a really good idea if we stopped bombing the farmers' fields where they grow grain right now. And we could let some farmers grow things. We need a fair amount of grain and food for the world. We have gotten very good at this. We actually grow far more food than we need. There's no reason for any person on the planet to starve for lack of food. We have food. We throw away food we don't like because it looks kind of bad and we don't want to put it on the shelf, so we just throw it away. There's no distribution system. The farmer can't get it anywhere. It costs him money or her money. And the restaurants don't pick it up because they want their food to look good. Sometimes those will get chopped up and put into different products because food that doesn't look good but still tastes good you can use in some things. But a lot of it just gets chucked. Anything that you see on a grocery shelf that doesn't get sold, sometimes what grocery stores will do, take all the produce that didn't sell past the date, and they will actually spray it with something to make it poisonous before they put it in the garbage so that people don't eat it, because they want to make sure people are buying things. Because capitalism. But we have enough food. We do have some programs to donate that food. So there might be a local grocery store that when the food gets near its expiry date, they may donate to a local shelter. On the other hand, why are you donating sometimes expired food to a shelter? Doesn't sound very nice. And food for a long time has been fairly cheap. It's when food distribution goes wrong, it starts becoming expensive. U.S. right now is apparently having a problem with eggs because they don't produce enough. And so they asked Finland. Finland said no. They asked Denmark. Denmark said, didn't you want Greenland? And said no. And then they asked a third country. And it's just a matter, there's more than enough eggs in the world. There's more than enough food in the world. We produce way more food than we need. And all of food production, not all, most of food production is we want to grow as much food in as small a field. So we want it high density as possible. And we use machines to do as much as the physical labor as possible so that one person can grow far more food than they ever could before and feed thousands and thousands of people. Problems with this is if you have a field all full of the exact same plant, what could that be a problem?
Disease, predators.
What kind of predators the plant? That's exactly right.
Locusts and stuff.
Could be. There's a faster evolving one that will take advantage though. Locusts come out like once every 17 years and they just eat everything. What kind of things evolve pretty much to attack every organism on the planet? Bacteria? Viruses. And so if you have what's called a monoculture, it's all one type, then you are a very attractive target. Some people will say that was the Irish potato famine. There's a particular type, I think it was a mold, that potatoes are not native or indigenous to Ireland. They became a very good crop. And potatoes mostly fed the people that worked on the farms. The grains and other produce was shipped away by their English landlords. The Irish potato famine was when the mold spread because they were all the same type of potatoes, and it killed off all the potatoes. It wasn't that Ireland didn't have enough food. It's that they weren't allowed to eat the food that was there because their landlords came and took all their food away that was grown in the fields and shipped it out of Ireland. Ireland grew enough food that there was no reason for a famine. It's just that they didn't own it. Their landlords owned it, and their own crops of the potatoes. So the potato famine was a failure of capitalism, and not really a failure of a food crop. One food crop failed. They didn't all fail. But if you get a monoculture, that is an attractive target for a disease. It's also really easy to harvest. We like monocultures because they're all the same type of grain, and we can design the machine to harvest that grain. If you have all different types of grains, then you need all different types of machines, and it just makes things more complicated. So we do need to have a seed bank of all the different types of things we've grown. We don't want to just focus on one, because what if that one becomes no good, a disease comes in and wipes it all out? I think I've mentioned before, none of you have actually tasted a proper banana in your entire life. You've tasted the shoddy, cheap imitation banana that we got after the Cavendish died out. Now, any of you live in Florida? Anybody know anybody who lives in Florida? Apparently there are secret Cavendish trees in Florida with the original banana. Smuggle me one. I desire to taste it. They are bigger, they are better, they taste better, they're sweeter, they have a proper flavor. I have never had one and I want one. So bad. It is illegal, just to be clear. I've never told you to do this. I'm telling you right now, don't smuggle fruit into the country. If you want an A, you wouldn't do that at all. Never. Just to be clear. Don't smuggle them. But the only reason we have bananas is we had a backup crop. We have a very efficient system. As I have been saying in the last minute over and over again, we produce more food than is required. We waste food. Food goes rotten in the fields. When COVID hit, there was food distribution was a problem. There was empty shelves because people weren't picking up the food. There was an onion farmer who got a semi-popular TikTok because his onions were rotting in the field. Everybody was like, donate it to the food bank. And he's like, our local food bank has any onions they want, I can deliver to them. But I can't deliver to all of the food banks. I don't have the trucks, I don't have the money, I don't have the distribution system. The distribution system stopped. And when the distribution system stopped, then the onions rotted in the fields, and so we couldn't get to the food to where it needs. Nothing is really about producing sometimes, it's more about logistics. How do you get what you need to where you need it? And that's what COVID shut down, and then everybody bought toilet paper. We had enough toilet paper too. Nobody needed to buy it. We actually produce it here in BC. So this is our food production. Projected world population. This is an older map. We're going to be going up, obviously, to our 9 billion. But our food production overall has been increasing every single year and is outpacing world population. World population could outpace it if we start being silly with our food production. We need to keep finding ways to grow more food. For the first time ever, they also predicted there might be a decrease in human population just naturally, because it turns out once you decrease infant mortality, and you can be pretty much guaranteed that if you have 2 kids, when you're older you'll still have 2 kids. People stop having 12 kids. Because if infant mortality is at 30%, to be guaranteed 2 kids, you need to have about 8 to 12 children. Not that you won't have more than that, but to be guaranteed, like 99% sure. That's, by and large, why people, in many ways, have lots of kids. And certainly used to when infant mortality rates were higher. As infant mortality rates have dropped, people have started having less kids. It's really expensive because once you have a child, it is mandatory to send them to Brentwood. And that's really expensive. It's like pushing a new car into the ocean every single year and just saying goodbye. Think about that next time you're not doing prep. Your parents are pushing a new car into the ocean for you every single year. Yeah.
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 Nice car.
Nice car too. And depending on where you're from, nicer and nicer cars. Yeah. So, with all the costs of having children, it turns out if you have a choice A lot of people just choose to have 1 or 2 children. That's less than 2 on average. It actually turns out to be 1.8. We might naturally hit a peak. And then we just have to feed the amount of people that are here, or at least decrease it to a manageable level. We don't even have to hurt anybody to do that. However, if we keep having food insecurity, people are going to get weirder and weirder about food. What the? This should have a title on it called Problems. So we are a bit of a victim of our own success. The problems with modern agriculture that we just said, it lacks genetic diversity. So we often grow monocultures. If you go to an old orchard that has a variety of different apples, you can find apples that haven't been tasted in a couple hundred years because they're not in grocery stores. Sure, 1 or 2 people, but you just can't find them. There are apples that are specifically made for canning. There's apples that are made just for pie. There's apples that are made just to taste good after 3 months in your cellar, and they don't taste good when you pick them. We have bred them for all sorts of different purposes, and we don't use a lot of them now. You tend to find the same 8 apples in every store. If you go to different places, you might find slightly different ones, but there's a heck of a lot out there. But if a disease comes around, takes a whole variety out, and we didn't keep the old ones around, then we don't have that genetic diversity. And it makes it really attractive to disease. Yep.
Can we go for rugby?
Sadness.
We'll be back.
Will you?
Or no. No.
This class?
Next class we'll be back.
I think you should. I think you just promised to come back in like 5 to 10 minutes.
The bus ride is like 3 hours.
Ooh. How many people are going to rugby? Just you're even dressed appropriately. Well done. I commend you for having your sports gear correct, dressed in the same way. Where are you going? Okay. Now a reminder: you are excused to leave early, but only retroactively. You have to win. If you lose, I'll sign you up for Wednesday morning extra homework with Ms. Allen for skipping class.
Tomorrow we're not going to Wait, not so wait. Are you in my house?
I think I rewrote that. This is the last page of biology. I don't really apologize because I wanted to go through it and get her done. I'll give you a 5-minute break after this, and then I think we have 20 minutes, 15 minutes left. We're going to do a little section on ethics and logic. I'm going to cram as much into you as I can. We're going to watch 2 films on genetically modified organisms. and have an opportunity for some reflection, critical thinking, because that's probably, that and the word organic in the grocery store is probably the most related thing that this would have an outcome for. And given that we've just done evolution and genetics, you should have some understanding when you walk in of what's going on in there. The grocery store can be quite the, I wouldn't say area of science. There's so much both science and nonsense in there. Crops and animals are selected for their efficiency, not necessarily, again, for their taste or nutrition. So if you're a farmer and you're trying to sell your red delicious apple and everybody's eating it because it is so delicious, but you're not making very much money because the only people you can sell it to are the 3 local grocery stores, and every time you try and ship it across the country, it rots by the time it gets there and they don't pay you, or they're very angry with you, then you need to breed it to last longer. And once you breed it to last longer, it doesn't taste as good, but you made more money. So you can keep your farm going. Market forces often determine the welfare of crops and animals. Very rarely is it about GMOs or breeding, but if you have, and this is often why if you're looking for a more sustainable way, the small local farmer can sometimes be a lot better, because a small local farmer will be looking at things, this cow produces a lot of milk. But I can tell that this particular strain, breed, family of cow, because I bred it in a certain way, it's becoming more lame over time. And they're making money, they're making enough money. We don't need to keep extending that. Let's breed in some stronger legs, make sure the breed doesn't become something like some of those dogs where their eyes pop out, or like the German Shepherd where their back falls apart. But if you're a corporation with shareholders, you have to breed for the highest amount of money you can every single quarter. And that's become a problem with modern farming, because more and more farms are bought by corporations. And in certain parts of the world, if you are not getting the most money possible, you can actually be sued by your shareholders. So you can say, oh, we increased our profits 5%, and the shareholders go, yeah, but if you'd made this decision, you would have increased it by 7%. We're going to sue you for the difference. And so you're required, ethically, to always make the decision for the most profit, because unless there's a law against it, you're allowed to do that. So some of the most horrendous practice of modern day farming, in which animals aren't allowed to go ever outside, or they're tied up, or for long periods of time, or how they're kept, is often due to the market forces. You want to produce it as cheaply as possible and as much as possible. Same with those breeding of chickens. I'm entirely sure, even if it is the best way to get the fastest amount of meat, do we really want to breed chickens that will grow so fast they can't walk? If there's a zombie apocalypse and all the chickens die because nobody's paying attention to the chickens and some wild ones get out and then they die because they can't walk, that seems bad. There should be some level perhaps of animal welfare in there just in case we ever get reduced back in time and we have to resort to traditional breeding methods. There's a video here. What was that one again? Oh, yeah, no, I won't do that one. We are going to do the GMO one, I think, instead. So, I blasted at you with the end of biology. Let's take until, what do we go to 11:35? 45? So that would give, okay. Back here at 11:31. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you very much. Go to the bathroom. Don't be loud. Why is everybody going to the bathroom at the same time? That's new.
pig farm?
I'm gonna dissect you like a pig brain next
Yeah,
year.
that would be
Anatomy.
cool, but not a worm. Not a worm.
I'm gonna kill myself with and you like spread it
Do you
apart,
know-
like cut it in little.
Don't worms, like, don't they reproduce when you cut it? No?
Or like it's already dead, so it can't.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, oh. That sounds.
Okay, but other than that, you make it sense.
What?
What am I doing?
Oh, I know who that guy is. Who says and the final one? Yeah.
Okay, 11:31.
TDM, I just think.
That was your 5 minutes. Put away your phone. If you do it fast enough, I won't make you go to the box. Go, 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 go. Catch a machine. If you can get out a piece of lined paper.
I don't have one.
Yeah.
I might need a box.
Did I bring some? When I said I might have some, it depends what's in here. Nope. No, curse it. Last one. Sadness. If anybody can lend out lined paper to those who don't have it, I will bring a stack next day and read and help you. I will say that you are supposed to be prepared for each and every class by having lined paper, but we haven't done it until now, so I'm somewhat sorry. Does anybody have lined paper we can lend out? We have one person.
I think Ariel has that.
Some people. I will bring, Eric, you can get some from me in the house. I have like a stack. And do I have blank paper? Okay, does everybody have something to write on? Okay. This is a lesson I came up with a bit last year. It's a bit changed. And in the process, I realized every teacher would like to teach you critical thinking, and we all say it's part of their classes. I don't know if you've noticed, but every teacher thinks critical thinking is something different, and it's not. It's all the same. If you take it at university, you take critical thinking, you will be in a logic course. You will learn first year logic. Doesn't matter which university, doesn't matter where you go. If you take critical thinking, you're taking logic. Critical thinking is logic. It's really easy. I even have a book. It's called Critical Thinking. It's just logic. That's all it is. And so if a teacher is telling you that this is critical thinking, it's probably part of logic, or they just want it to sound really good. That's a type of analysis that they're hoping will fit into the critical thinking umbrella. Critical thinking isn't necessarily ethics, and in this particular analysis I'd like us to do on GMOs, you do have to have some familiarity with logic and ethics. I know many times you're asked to do a value judgment on something. I don't even know if you have values. Do you have values? Do you have a value system? Do you have a way of telling from right and wrong? Maybe you're a relativist, in which case, why are you here? Because there is no right and wrong. And so I want to make sure that at least you have some way of analyzing that problem. And so we're going to do a very quick run through of 2 entirely separate year-long university courses. Both of these are in university. You're going to get a very thumbs down view. So, 2 types of claims. I would like you to think of a claim that can be absolutely 100% true, and probably even provable, and false at the same time. What is a claim that can be true and false at the same time?
Technically, it could be proved that the sky is a different color from the perspective of different species.
Ooh, yes. I like the example of color because I'm gonna put 1 here and 2 there. 1's the easy one. And an example, perception of color, that's a really good example. Well, let's do the easy one first. Give me a claim that can absolutely be it's either right or it's wrong, no two ways about it. You have learned nothing in science or socials ever. There's no claims you can make that are either right or they're wrong. Yes?
Like the element has one neutron or something? Or
I mean, that is a claim. Element has one neutron.
one electron? I don't know.
It actually doesn't matter what you say, because that is either right or it's wrong. Right? Right?
Where are you supposed to?
And anybody have another claim that is either right or wrong? You know no things. You have no facts at your disposal. Any fact from socials class. Let's not do science class. Any facts.
Water is a solid.
I didn't know socials did that, but that is absolutely, that is a fact. It's either true or it's false. I can go get a glass of water and go, hey, it's liquid. And I would say you're wrong. But it's still an example of that claim. It doesn't have to be right or wrong. It just has to be something that's either right or wrong. You may think of a claim that it can be both right and wrong at the same time. Broccoli is the worst plant in existence.
Subject.
It's a subjective claim, so you've guessed the first category. Subjective.
Wait, what? Where are you supposed to guess?
Because broccoli is the worst plant is certainly true. Who's it true for?
Oh, so is it just objective, subjective?
Yeah, this is subjective and subjective. And you do this in English, don't you?
Think about it.
Objective claims and subjective claims. Which class do you do this in? English? What class did you do?
I read it in a book.
You read it in a book. I thought English did that at one point. How many of you have not seen a subjective and objective? Okay, a quick definition. Subjective can be true and false. This is not a formal definition. This is our quick, rough, and ready definition at the same time. My example I traditionally use is that mint chocolate ice cream is the worst. How many of you like mint chocolate ice cream? See? It is both true and false at the same time. How many of you think it's the best type of ice cream? Ah. So I think it's the worst. But that can both be true and false at the same time. A subjective claim does not require that it be only one or the other. It can be different. It can be, anything you think about a thing that's a qualitative thing like that. We often will call those, say, opinions. But they also can be proven, because you can lie about your own subjective claims. You could lie and you secretly think that mint chocolate ice cream is the worst, but you want to pretend it's the best. Like, you can still prove subjective claims. But they can be true and false at the same time. Objective claims are either true or they're not. These are what we tend to call facts. They're either true or not. Mr. Neufeld is 9 feet tall. Is an objective claim.
Are you serious?
I never used to be 9 feet.
True or what?
Am I 9 feet tall?
What does that say?
If I believe I'm 9 feet tall, am I 9 feet tall?
Yeah.
On, what is
No, if you believe it.
But if I believe it, am I 9 feet tall?
No.
No. No.
It's a fact, is that a true?
Just to be, and I'm not going to go, I'm just going to state this, and then we're going to move on.
We're on?
And one of the things I'm going to be asking you to look for in the films I'm going to show you is subjective claims and objective claims. Yes?
What's the end of the blue writing? On?
We're on?
Either true or not? Yeah, I don't know.
But wouldn't that be the same as subjective if you say
No, because okay.
No, no, no. Oh.
Subjective can be both at the same time, but objective is
One or the other.
Water is not a solid. Water is only
Yeah.
solid at the same time.
Well, it could be
It could, but
in terms of there's other things. But again, it's an objective claim. You can examine it and figure out whether it's true or not. There is nuance here because people will tend to think like, well, subjective claims don't matter. They're not true. And they can absolutely be true. And I can give you an example of like a bad one. You believe strongly that a meteorite is on path for the planet Earth and is going to strike in Mill Bay. And you may be thinking, aha, I will just get out of Mill Bay. No! It's going to destroy the entire planet. Your roommate, who's not very secure, you happen to know their banking password. You got a fair amount of cash in there. What are some options open to you right now?
go fly to the moon.
Pardon?
Go fly to
Go fly to the moon. If you can get to SpaceX in time, maybe. But they don't have a moon landing thing. You'll probably just die of suffocation in orbit and get to watch a spectacle. You may act on that claim, and then later on when it's not true, it still affected your actions. So subjective claims will still affect your actions. Also, subjective claims can become true. So for example, you believe the stock market's going to crash tomorrow. Now, you believing that doesn't make a difference. But if you get enough people to believe it, and then you withdraw your stocks, and they withdraw their stocks, and everybody starts withdrawing their money out of the stock market, what happens? Crashes. So our beliefs can shape what can make objective truth. So there is nuance in here that I'm not going into. This can absolutely be blurred in between, but we're going to focus on objective claims, objective claims. And the wild thing that I'm going to suggest is that is not ethics, and that this is ethics. I'm going to use ethics as opposed to morality, so it sounds a little more erudite and refined, but it's basically morality. But it's like a formal morality. It's how you would examine a system if you're making it on someone else's behalf, for example. You are a doctor trying to decide what to do in a patient, so we only have 2 minutes. 2 minutes is enough time to kill someone. So, I don't know if I've done this in this class before. I tend to do it when illustrating this point. So, right here, I want to put your hand on the button.
All right.
Okay? And we got a nice group of 4 right in the back. Let's make it a 6 to 1. So if you two just move your seats, just slide back. You are the international train-loving club for deaf people. And you are holding a party on the train tracks. As you do traditionally every year, the people know the trains have been shut down for that track, you're fine. Okay? You, the only one left in this area, are a worker working on some train tracks. You got a job, and you've shut down the trains on that, and you are replacing one of the mechanisms to move train tracks around. Don't notice yet. A train is coming, and it's going to hit that group because they forgot to file their forms properly, so the train was never actually shut down. And it's going to just rip right through them all. Okay?
So what did they?
If you press the button, it will hit here instead, and you'll just kill one person
Oh.
versus those 6.
Okay, then I'll just kill them.
You don't even know. Yeah. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. One person died. Okay. Next scenario. No, we'll do the next scenario next day. But next scenario, you're going to be a doctor. But the same people will weirdly be involved. Okay.
Problem. That's inspiration.
There's probably problems. But there's nuance to the problem. Because that's the easy problem. The doctor is more harder. You could harvest all of her ability and give them to 6 people.
So, we'll still be at risk. Like none this year will still be.
Yeah.
Oh, they're all going to
No,
die.
I did it once.
Our
No, hers.
So we have a disease
Yeah.
that we need.
Like you need a heart.
I would do
So you're not having.
No, we're not in the tree track.
Why?
No, now you're in a hospital. Slowly dying.
Cool.
Yeah, dead in 48 hours unless you get an organ transplant. Now will he push the button?